But if you look at like the global balance sheet, everything we've ever built, every database, every truck, every building, there's like $1.7 quadrillion on the global balance sheet. And if we can get smarter about reusing these pieces, right, then it's actually like economic leverage. And I think it's the only way we're going to be able to pay for the sort of societal progress that we want to see. As a company builder, I've always been interested in sales and revenue and income statements and stuff. And now I'm really interested in terms of our balance sheet and our assets and what are out there and how can we just be smarter. And I think it's core to solving problems going forward. It's why we're doing this as New Impact.
Hey everyone, it's Tamara Thompson with Broadcast Your Authority, and I'm super excited and grateful for our next guest that has flown in all the way from Seattle. Small fact, I'm actually born and raised from Bellevue, Washington.
Cool.
So it's a cool, I know Seattle very well. But Jens Molbak is here to join us, and he's the founder and CEO of New Impact. He also co-founded Coinstar, if you guys have heard of that. It's a little bit of a company that you might know of. Jens has a passion for entrepreneurship, innovation investing, and a world where social and economic progress are available to all. He is the founder of New Impact, which I had stated, a humanity benefit nonprofit that seeks to utilize a data-driven tri-sector approach to align the resources available in the private, social, and public sectors to generate superior societal and financial outcomes. He first learned of the potential for tri-sector solutions when he founded Coinstar in 1990 with the goal of creating a company that could simultaneously benefit the public, private, and non-profit sectors. Coinstar today has processed over, is that 60 billion?
Yeah, a lot.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Raised over 100 million for nonprofits and saved the U.S. government billions in reduced costs. He holds an MBA from Stanford University and a BA from Yale University, native of Seattle again, and an avid hiker. I used to hike a lot. We'll have to catch up on which hikes you've done.
Lots of good hiking in the Northwest.
Love the Pacific Northwest. Very much miss it now in the dry Arizona area. You do backcountry skiing too?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, because you get to hike and you get to ski, which is a great combo.
I love that. Yeah. Well, an enthusiast of landscape architecture. So
I'm gonna have to shorten that bio a little bit and make it a little more clear.
I like it though. I was like, I'm getting it out there, but at the same time, I'm like, I love everything that you're about and what you do and what you believe in and your core values here. So, well, grateful to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, I know that a colleague of ours, Sheila Andreen, she ended up introducing us, and so I'm grateful for her as well. For that Seattle-based entrepreneur as well. So, let's just dive right in though, because we're all talking about tri-sectors here behind the scenes. I know Caitlin was like, I was researching things about tri-sectors.
Yeah, I had never heard of the term before. So I'd love for you to share with people who like me might not be quite as familiar with what that is.
Yeah, so it's a term that we're using. And it basically, think about the work that we're doing at New Impact as we're business model innovators. And so we're just encouraging people when you're building your business to, think about all the resources that are out there. And a lot of, entrepreneurs will think about, private sector resources and they're creating stuff. But they'll often shy away from government resources or overlook social sector resources. And we're kind of like, why not use all the resources that are out there in society, right? And use the full suite. And if you can use what's already been built, right, and repurpose it for your business, then you can spend your time and effort and money on building the new cool stuff that you want to do, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it's basically a whole of society approach. And there are amazing resources out there in the sectors. It's how I built Coinstar. We advise and coach a lot of other countries, and we are really into these tri-sector models. We think they unite profit and purpose. We think they help companies scale faster, and we think they're the model for the future.
So how did you get to where you are today? I don't think anybody ever grows up and is, I'm going to be the CEO of a successful company and have, $1 billion exit. So, I would love to know a little bit more about just your journey of how you got here.
Well, we can start a lot of places. I'll go quick. So I think part of it is my parents immigrated from Denmark after World War II. So they came to the U.S. in 1948 and 1950. And they really valued democracy because they'd seen what had happened when it had been lost. They loved the free enterprise system, capitalism, and they brought with them sort of a Nordic sense of, community values and whatnot. So I like to say or joke that I was raised in a tri-sector household. So when I was looking for, a career, I spent a year or a couple of years in New York working as an analyst for an investment bank, which was interesting, learned a lot, but it wasn't really compelling. And I thought it would be interesting to have a career where you could work, in a for-profit company and maybe work in the nonprofit world and then do something in the public sector. But there weren't any jobs that allowed you to do all three at once. So Coinstar was a chance to say, hey, I can actually work in all three sectors at once. It was a chance to build a really interesting company with a big market, right? Consumers have all these coins sitting at home. There's $8 billion sitting in dresser tops. Which was a lot. So I was like, well, okay, I was a kid. I used to wrap them up in all the paper wrappers and take them down to the bank. And there was a better way to do that. But I also thought coins and charity have a whole history, like March of Dimes, Salvation Army. So we could have a machine that recycles coins for consumers, but we could also collect coins for charities and sort of enhance their fundraising. And then I did a little bit of thinking. I realized, if you look at the whole system of coins in the US, the Mint makes them and the Fed distributes them. And they've made like $15 billion worth of coins over 30 years. And like I said, half of them were out of circulation, but it meant the other half circulates. There's 7 billion. It creates a $150 billion market. And I'm like, if we actually get this working at scale, we're going to create the national coin recycling system. We're going to save all this money for the government. So it's like, I can build a cool company, work with cool people, help charities raise money, and save the government a bunch of money. So that was the motivation for Coinstar. So that's why I got it going, and that's what we built out. And fortunately, it worked. But it was a 10-year overnight success story. It wasn't like that.
Were there some pivotal decisions during that point that actually led it into a tri-sector model?
Yeah, there were a bunch of stuff. I'd say the most important decision was at the very beginning when we designed the model, because we had this in our head. We hadn't coined the term tri-sector. That's what I've learned.
Okay.
But it's like, we're going to build this in a way that makes it, useful. So when the government actually finds out about us, they'll be excited as opposed to come shut us down. And the same thing for nonprofit land. So that the core decision was designing sort of the fundamental tri-sector nature into the business at the very front. And I was too chicken to talk about it, frankly, to investors. But the story I like to tell is Coinstar was up and going. We're about 5 years into it, and we had our, stores were starting to adopt it, and we had our largest rollout ever in Los Angeles. So we got to roll out Ralph's and Vons supermarkets, and it was a couple hundred machines, and we were working super hard and getting it out there and thinking about the consumer message. Hey, there's this new machine that'll count your pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. But I get back to Seattle and my phone rings, and it's the Fed calling from Washington, D.C. And I'm like, 30 years old, and they're like, who are you? What are you doing? The West Coast has canceled all future penny orders. Fly to Washington, D.C. and explain yourself.
Immediately.
Oh, no.
Right. And we're like...
And that's not scary at all, right?
No, but it was scary, but we're also like psyched because we knew what was going to happen, right? We'd thought about this, right? So we're like, pumped, the Fed called, and we're like, oh crap, the Fed called. So we flew back and we explained ourselves, and they were confused, and then they're like, oh my God, you guys are you're creating this national system, right? Instead of us manufacturing Denver and Philadelphia, right, which is where coins are minted, right? And then getting shipped out to every zip code in the country, which costs them a lot of money. And then frankly, it's a bad product. Half the coins go missing and sitting on the dresser top. They're like, you're going to bring all this stuff back in. So they were super excited. They're like, this is amazing. But then they got confused. They're like, well, wait a second. Our job as the Fed is we regulate banks and stuff, and we can't regulate you. And you're not a contractor, so we don't have a contract with you, but you're going to save us all this money. What do we do with you? And what I said is, you don't have to do anything, right? We built our business to make you successful. And you've already given us the opportunity. They created this $150 billion market, right? We were just trying to make it more efficient. And so that was really important, right? And then the Fed helped accelerate us, in the US. And then a year later, I got a call from the Royal Mint in the UK. And they said, hey, we were just talking to the Fed. You're saving the US government all this money. Will you come do the same thing in the UK? That was a good call to get.
Yes.
Flew over. Long story short, they accelerated that rollout, and we had our fastest rollout ever in the UK. And I like to say that my private sector shareholders got that benefited that rapid rollout because we had a public sector benefit. So that core decision about trying to think what's good for government and good for our business went together and created the win-win. We did the same thing with the nonprofit sector. So I'll just tell that story quickly. I got another call from UNICEF, and I don't know, have any of you ever done the Trick or Treat for UNICEF program? At Halloween, kids go out with orange boxes and
they put money in it.
Put money in it. So UNICEF calls us up and they said, hey, you've got all these coin counting machines in these supermarkets, and we have like 100,000 kids going off and collecting coins at Halloween, but we have two problems. I'm like, what are they? And they're like, well, half the kids never send us the boxes after they've collected the money. Mm-hmm. They're not bad kids. They just,
right.
And I'm like, okay, I get that. And then they said the other half the kids actually send us the money, and we have to open up all these little cardboard boxes and dump it out. And I said, we're mission built for you. Just put a message on the back of the box that says, take your box of coins that you collected down the Coinstar machine at your local supermarket, punch in a 4-digit code. We cut our fee in half and we wire transfer the funds directly into UNICEF's bank account. So that led into this nonprofit thing. So what's great for Coinstar, we got advertising, promotion, trial, all the things that we needed as a business. And UNICEF got a great a fundraising piece. So that was kind of the tri-sector model at Coinstar. So that early on decision was probably the biggest thing that we made, and it taught us a lot.
Well, and because you made that decision, you're able to implement it into New Impact with that. Where do you see, can you share a little bit more about New Impact and its mission?
Yeah, so I left Coinstar when I was 40 and did a bunch of different stuff in my 40s. But when I hit 50, I was just starting to think more about, what do I want to do next? I thought about doing another company. I thought about doing a fund. But I got really interested in terms of how do we solve problems at scale faster. And I ended up founding New Impact, which is a nonprofit public good organization, much to my surprise and a lot of other people's surprise. But what we're trying to do is we really believe in these models. We think they're a superior, faster way to build your business. I love talking to entrepreneurs building their companies or, mid-cap companies or even Fortune 100 companies. And it's just a different mentality. It's a different approach, right? So we are trying to promote and pioneer this idea of what a tri-sector model is. So the first thing we're doing is trying to build this mindset. And it's starting to get taught in universities. We're really excited about that. So business schools are starting to teach this, public policy schools. If you go to your local incubator or accelerator, we'd love them all to have a segment on, how to build a tri-sector model. So this sort of this mindset piece. And the second thing we're doing is we're building tools for innovators. So you can go to our website and, go to Getting Started with TSI. And we have canvases and stuff. And right now we're building an AI tool, which we're really excited about, which helps people find these different resources and stuff out there. And then we do some coaching work. So we're trying to get more organizations to use this tri-sector lens because I think it's going to be good for them. And frankly, it's going to be good for society if we can build more organizations that integrate these benefits.
Are you guys looking at particular verticals to go get involved in? Is it just every business everywhere we want to try?
It's a great question, right? So I like to say we're not about the what, we're about the how. So I literally can talk to anybody in any industry and I'll ask them questions like, hey, tell me about your business strategy. And they'll give me a good private sector answer. And I'll say, well, how are you working with social sector organizations? They're like, oh, nonprofits, we're not really doing anything. And often nonprofits have really interesting resources that are good for your business and then you can be good for them too. I'll ask them, what's your public sector strategy? How are you working with government? And that's often met with groans like, oh, I don't want to work with government. They're going to slow me down. They're going to regulate me. And I'm like, wait a second. Government has a lot of really interesting assets, whether it's a city, a county, a state, a district, or the federal level. I mean, I point out, I found a $150 billion market in my pocket full of pennies, right? I can point out other companies. One of my favorites is a company called Propel, which is revamping the food stamp program. They found a $115 billion market and servicing 45 million Americans who are food insecure with this amazing database, right? And they've been working really closely with the Department of Ag. So the power of this way of thinking is it can really be used for any vertical, right? So we've had lots of conversations from, well, you pick it, housing, mental health, all sorts of good things that are out there. So this is a way of thinking. It's a mindset approach.
I think
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say it's perfect timing too, especially with the latest trend of ESG investing or socially responsible investing. There's certainly a market for hey, I'm a female business owner. I know what it took for me to get into this seat. I know what I went through as a female in finance. If I'm going to spend money, I want to give it to other women business owners. I want to give it to other people giving back too.
Yeah.
And so I think you present an interesting, it's just really good timing right now for business owners thinking about this in a different way. So for business owners looking to get into more of the philanthropy angle or working with government, how would you recommend business owners go from educating themselves to actually implementing those things in their business?
Well, it's one of the reasons why we're building tools, because this is a new way of thinking. I do just want to back up and say, what we're trying to do is a little bit different from ESG or CSR. We're really talking about your core business, the things that help you grow, scale, be more profitable, create a bigger, stronger business. And the point is you get to do that because you actually embed impact into the core model. It's not sitting off on the side as something that's nice to do. It's actually fundamental to the value of the business. So if people want to get started, I'd encourage them. We have tools on our website. They can go to newimpact.care. They can go to Getting Started. There's videos we have. We have tools they can download. And we're super excited. We're building an AI tool that helps them find resources. Because often people get really excited about this. They're like, well, I don't know what's where. So one of the things that we think needs to get built is sort of a resource finding tool. So you can say, hey, I have a business that does X, Y, and Z. Who in my area has resources that might be helpful? Maybe it's a government resource. Maybe it's a nonprofit resource. Maybe it's another company. And that just helps you accelerate and grow. So there's tools that are coming, right? And we hope to get taught and have them scale and all those sort of good things. It's really interesting trying to build a nonprofit. It's very different from building a for-profit.
So I love this. I love too that you're embracing AI, because sometimes you hear there's a little bit of pushback with it. And I like that it's being used for good and for helping entrepreneurs. And we kind of touched on it, but if a lot of times I hear entrepreneurs, like you were saying, say, I can't do the impact part right now. I have to get everything secure. So what's the piece of advice you'd give them to look at it from your model, your point of view?
To think differently. I mean, I was scared to talk about the impact and the charity piece for 5 years at Coinstar because I didn't think people would take me seriously. And then finally, people realized that, it's great for the charity. It's also good for Coinstar. And there's nothing wrong with being great marketing and having it being a great fundraising. Those two things can be synergistic. So I would just say, lean into really thinking carefully about building your model in a way that really works. Now, if you're just doing it so it's one way, it won't work, right? If you're saying, well, I'm going to do this, but there's no benefit for the government or no benefit for charity, it'll never scale, right? So the trick with these models is not only finding the right resources, but making sure you align interest, right? Which is very much of a market-driven concept. So I'd say, for people, get up to speed, read about it, watch some of the videos. It's new, play with it. We do coaching and advisory work for organizations as well, but we're pretty excited to see what people are coming up with. We have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so the couple of things that you mentioned that stuck with me is that you found, I think you said 150 billion of pennies in your pocket.
Right.
Is the AI tool going to have certain information about things within the government that might need help that people could maybe create a business around?
Yeah. So what, I talked to a lot of early entrepreneurs who were like, I wish I had an idea. And I tell them, listen, there's a bunch of scaled problems. There's 126 social safety net programs in the federal government. They all need help. This one company's done an amazing job around the food stamp program, but let's go through Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare. All of them are huge opportunities out there, and frankly need a lot of attention.
Right.
With the future of where the tri-sector solutions are heading, what would you say is, especially in the context of what you're saying, like current global challenges, like where do you see it helping more in the future here?
I'm 62, right? So I'm getting old, and I'm increasingly worried we're not solving problems at scale fast enough, right? And I think just kind of going high level, I think the only way we're going to get there, there's not enough new money in the world to solve all the things we want to solve, and we're not solving them fast enough. So there's sort of a scarcity mindset there. But if you look at like the global balance sheet, everything we've ever built, every database, every truck, every building, there's like $1.7 quadrillion on the global balance sheet. And if we can get smarter about reusing these pieces, right, then it's actually like economic leverage. I think it's the only way we're going to be able to pay for the sort of societal progress that we want to see. I often use the analogy because of the Danish background of like, buckets of Legos, right? So, let's just stay in the US. Let's say you have a big bucket of Legos that has all the assets companies have bought and it has everything you can imagine, right? And you have a big bucket of Legos that government has built. And you got a big bucket of Legos that nonprofits have built. And it's hard to find these things, right? But if you can reach in and find this database that's been built, which is perfect for a company like Propel or this, marketplace, and then you get to assemble them, right? And then add your own ingenuity and creativity to make them even better. I think that's what's going to help us drive progress faster. As a company builder, I've always been interested in sales and revenue and income statements and stuff. And now I'm really interested in terms of our balance sheet and our assets and what are out there and how can we just be smarter. And I think it's core to solving problems going forward. It's why we're doing this as New Impact.
What is some of the feedback, like you said, that some people kind of were shocked when you started as a nonprofit? Like, what's some of the feedback that you've gotten, and what is like your answer to them, like why you started as a nonprofit?
Well, the reason we're nonprofit is I think the idea is it's really big. We have huge thoughts about how ubiquitous this could be. And if I picked a company, I'd be doing that for 10 years and I will have done, another company, right? I did Coinstar. And then so what? There's two companies, right? But nothing's really changed at scale. And when I thought about like a fund, I think this is an excellent investment thesis. I think every venture capital fund, private equity fund, hedge fund should be thinking about funding tri-sector models because they're just smarter. But if you just do it as a fund, that's 50 companies or maybe 100 companies, right? And I think this approach is so powerful that it needs to be a public good, which is why I decided to create the nonprofit. And every now and then I'm like, why did I do this? Because nonprofits are hard to build and you have to do a bunch of things around nonprofit land. But I really think that as a society, we need these sort of public goods that are out there and being built. And we want to work with universities and people who can teach and scale this work. But it's a whole different challenge for us right now.
Well, that was another question I had is, so what's the feedback been from actually the government entities, the cities, the states, the universities, and how are you, I guess, rolling out to get as much information from them of where they're needing help to then kind of bring it back, or is that not?
Yeah, no, it's a thing. I mean, I can tell you about, I've spent a lot of time in DC. I've spent a time in my local government. I'll say a couple things. People are really interested. I mean, one story, I remember I was talking to someone in a mayor's office and we'd done this resource map of the city. Like, what are all the government assets? Because we didn't know. And we showed it to them and they're like, oh my God, we don't even know what we have ourselves, And then we showed them what the county had, and they're like, well, we never talked to the county. And then we certainly don't know what the state or the Fed has. But if you could say, well, let's say who has resources for like affordable housing, there are vast resources out there, but they're not organized in a way for it. So the feedback from government's like, this is so interesting. And with the story about Propel and their providers app, which is being used by like 6 million people on the SNAP program today, Department of Ag knows about it now, Office of Management Budget. And they're like, how in the heck did this private sector company innovate around a federal social safety net program? So they're like, tell us how to do that, right? So that conversation's started up. And of course, I can tell the story like, I did the innovation around the Fed and the Mint and that savings piece. And hopefully we have enough case studies where officials start to say, hey, we ought to be thinking much more broadly about building these models at scale because we need it, right? There's a bunch of stuff that's got to get solved out there. So they're intrigued. Everybody's intrigued, but the tools don't quite exist yet. So we have to, what we're trying to do at New Impact is scale tools and get them out there. It's hard to change mindsets. It's new ideas, right? People have never heard about it. So we got to kind of, create a movement or spread this sort of thing. We need a lot of people to adopt it. But the actual, picks and shovels of building the models is it takes work, right? Which is why we're so interested in the AI tools. Maybe AI can accelerate the adoption. So we're having fun.
I love what you said about balance sheet. And I think it's such a good reminder for folks listening.
Not everybody loves balance sheets.
It's funny. I just sat down with a client last week and I'm in wealth management and we had done a full inventory and, their balance sheet net worth was, about 6.8 million. And I asked them, I said, so how does that number make you feel? And they're like, honestly, I'm shocked. I didn't even know I had that much money. And so it's such a good reminder that, what happens on the personal level and even with business owners also happens at the government level. And so if you're having problems, if you're identifying areas of opportunity in day-to-day life, it probably translates into other areas as well if you're looking for problems to solve. When you mentioned you're 62, this is a newer venture for you. When you think about your legacy, and what you're building right now, what are you most excited about leaving behind?
Well, I guess I don't think of. I'm still in the building phase. I haven't really thought about legacy piece. I do.
Well, I know you like that you're creating a whole concept around the purpose
Yeah.
to profit
Mhm.
in that side too.
I guess what I I've been around long enough now where it bothers me that we're not like say solving problems at scale fast enough, and I actually get a little bit worried that if we don't speed up, we're not heading to a good place. And pick your set of issues. So I feel a sense of urgency for trying to get solutions out there and support the people who are doing the work. I guess rather than thinking about legacy, I think the words I think about, in my daily life, I think about, acting with integrity, acting with authenticity, and then acting with service, right? So I kind of ask myself every morning, how can I be of service today? So I guess if I thought about legacy, it would be about having served or something along those lines. Thanks for the question. I hadn't articulated it like that before.
You had a tri-sector solution to legacy right there.
I was just thinking that.
Threes, yep.
Yeah. 3
So I got
points.
another question for you, just because you said that as a side gig, I guess you do investments. What are you seeing that's exciting these days in that space?
I get again. I'm agnostic in terms of the areas.
Mhm.
I can tell you the areas that I get that I'm. If I could wave a magic wand, I wish there were more opportunities for. I think the food system needs a lot of help in the U.S. in terms of nutrition consumption. There's so much waste in the food system. We actually have some ideas about creating a public utility for food, which needs a private sector company to be built and stuff, which we can get into. So I think food's super important. Every city we work in, this question of housing, whether it's affordable housing or rent, there is a massive need for thinking about housing. So that would be an area that I think would be really interested in. I think mental health. There is not that I've seen a great scaled mental health solution, and a lot of the country is stressed and pretty upstream. I think if we can help people feel better, so I think companies that can think about scaled mental health solutions, that would be probably number 3. And then of course climate, and just thinking about what's happening long term, and climate's hard for a bunch of reasons that are out there. So I guess if someone were to, I don't do a lot of investing. Frankly, most of my money goes into trying to support a nonprofit. Haven't made any money in 10 years. It's really going into trying to get this work together. But those would be the areas that I think if we could figure out food, housing, mental health, and climate, I think people are way better off. And and I wish there was more political, not to go into politics, focus on actually solving problems. Because we need real solutions out there sooner.
I really appreciate the awareness you bring to all of those issues in this way. It was about a decade ago. I remember attending an event where they asked what county I lived in. And then they said, do you know that 30% of the kids in your county go to school hungry every day? And without that data, I would have just assumed my suburban neighborhood was that way. So for me listening in, not with the extensive financial background, but as a champion and advocate I really think the underdog a lot of times. Yeah. I really appreciate the humanity that you bring and that human story and the opportunity you give to not only help others, but provide and enlighten others about that list that you have, because I would agree, it's integral.
Well, thanks for saying that. And I often tell myself, so I've learned so much the last 10 years, and I keep saying this work has changed me more than I've changed it, which is not yet the right balance. I want to be able to give something bigger back. But, you spend time with, I've spent a lot of time around the social safety net and the bottom 40 or 50% in the country. I've been lucky. I was, born to immigrant parents who had $25 in their pocket, but it was a great family. I got a great education. I've been given great opportunities. But that's not the case for many, many people. I mean, I'm always struck by this stat that something like 60% of the country does not have $500 of savings. And just the mental stress that would be like, sort of the boot on the throat, to quote Andrew Yang, that brings to people, right? That's really powerful. And this is the U.S., right? Can't we do better than this? If we're supposed to be the shining, light and beacon in the world for moving democracy and capitalism and freedom forward, 1 out of 7 people is food insecure. More than half the country doesn't have $500. That's what we are. I mean, we can be a lot better than this. And we're an innovative country. It's like, let's get after it. I mean, we are full of innovation and ingenuity and resources. And, I just think we got to lead more and get after it. So that just gets me fired up.
I could continue this conversation all day, but I know we don't have time for all of that. But so tell us a little bit more about how people can become involved with New Impact. Where would they go? How would they contact your company and team?
Sure. So we're a small team, but they can go to our website, which is newimpact.care. Note, it's not a .care. It's not a .gov. It's not a .com. It's not a .org.
It shows that you care.
That was the thing.
Right.
Because I think caring matters, right? We're officially a C3. So I'd say we have tools for innovators that are out there. There's also a contact us. The AI tool is not yet released, but we're super interested for people to play with it. We've given it to about 40 people so far to get feedback, so people can do that.
Have you launched on any the social channels as well?
No, we have not yet. But the other thing is we need resources, right? So if there's people who know how to code or AI or want to help us build this, right? We're building public goods that are out there. And then we're a really unusual nonprofit. No one knows how to fund us or even what we do. There's not many nonprofits that kind of have how we describe it. So they can show up on the site and sign up for the newsletter and look for tools and stuff. And I'd say if you want to see us, locally, ask your local university to teach this and contact. If you have a local accelerator or an incubator, we're very interested in this content getting distributed. We are really interested in being a field. I think that needs to get built out. So the team can always be bigger. And if you want to lean in, come join us. We are trying to make this grow. So just sign up, contact us, and we'd love to expand the team.
Well, I love that. And thank you so much for flying in and joining us on the show
Happy
today.
to. It's fun to do this.
So, so those of you that are listening, newimpact.care, check out the website and more information. If you're, anyone that's feeling, called to reach out, definitely connect with the team over there. And those of you that are watching this episode, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, and we'll see you in the next episode.